And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at two more of these summoners from the final group of 8 summoners for Summoner Wars Forever. These are the second summoners for 2 of the factions, the Benders, who are one of the most annoying enemies that you'll ever fight against. They might just be called the Annoying Army. And the Filth, which is very aptly named, although this one shows a cute little girl who's coming to get you in your dreams. Anyhow, let's take a look at these 2 new summoners and the cards that come with them. So Shiva here, the summoner of the Benders, has the ability to skip movement phase and then move 3 enemy common or champion units. So instead of moving your own units, you can move the enemies, which makes her very unique and interesting and really is going to be a pain in the neck to the people you're playing against. The fact that she's 3 with a ranged attack is also quite useful. Now the most common here is the puppets. Now the puppets can't move by themselves. And instead of attacking with a puppet, you can basically move them next to someone else who's not a puppet common. So they can be controlled by other people. However, you can animate them with a card here and move them all 2 spaces each. You can bring a puppet back from your opponent's discard pile. One of the champions is a puppet master. And at the beginning of the attack phase, if he doesn't move, you can pick a puppet to move. So puppets are controllable. They're cheap and easy to get out on the board, but you're going to have to use these cards and other people to move them. The other common is a shifter. These guys are interesting because when you summon them, you can immediately basically switch with one of your opponent's commons, which is a neat idea. You're not giving them a bad common, though. The shifter has 3 health with 1 attack. But if they have some really cool commons or something unique that they're working with underneath their control, the shifter can really disrupt their plans, which of course is what the Benders are all about. We have Wither, where anyone next to a shifter or parasite takes 1 wound, and then you kill your shifters and parasites. Hinder, you basically knock off your opponent's abilities, which is a really, really cool thing to do, especially when they have a lot of unique, interesting abilities. The Siren is the 3rd common in this set, where basically they can pull people to them, so they can whop them up 1. And then the last 2 champions here are Haku, I keep calling him Haiku, and you can make someone reroll a die. Kind of a very normal champion. And in fact, Lem's kind of normal too. He's just like this massive, powerful guy who has 5 dice to attack. It's just that if he rolls a miss, he takes a hit himself. But still, he can come up and brutally beat up your opponent. Then it's time for Creep City here. We have the Filth. Now here we have this little girl, little Mita. She's the summoner. And gifts from Daddy. And we still have not yet figured out who Daddy is. Is he the big cloud behind her? Now, what's unique about her is that she comes with Nanny. Nanny is the first champion that I know of that starts on the game. And they basically, as long as they're next to each other, neither one of them is affected by card effects. And you can put wounds on Nanny rather than on your summoner. So it's kind of like a 2-piece summoner. That's the way I feel about it. She can also pull mutations from the discard pile for magic points and put them in her hand. And then all her cards just have that kind of creepiness about her. Daddy doesn't like you. And essentially here she can put 3 wound markers on a champion or a common next to her, which is annoying. Daddy, I'm scared, lets her run away. The commons in this one, Deathseeker's interesting. If someone moves next to the Deathseeker, they die. All right, well, that's not great, of course, but remember, the commons of the Filth are to be put out there for mutations. The Herald gets to roll 2 dice to attack, but they pretty much have to be the same number, or else it's a miss. Here, she can get mutations pretty easy by, I want a new toy, or look what I can do. Then let's take a look at the different mutations that are in this set. We have the Leech Mutant, who can basically steal a card from your opponent's discard pile, put on your magic pile. The Blood Spray Mutant, which is really just gross to think about. When they wound your opponent, you can move them. The Blade Mutant, again, it's like they said, how can we make these things so disgusting nobody will ever want to look at them? When he attacks somebody, if he wounds them, instead of putting 1 wound on them, you put 4 wounds on them. Love this guy, really. It's just that he has to hit. The Springy Mutant, if you're afraid of spiders, you're not going to want to play with this guy. who bounces back when hit. The Amoeba unit, which when it goes into the discard pile, you put it in your opponent's and your owner's hand instead, so he just keeps coming back. The gas-filled mutant, super gross and disgusting, but this is kind of like a walking time bomb. You can just walk him up there. When he's destroyed, everyone next to him takes a wound. The drool mutant, when he gets hit, the person that hits him is thrown back. And then the very powerful tusk mutant, who basically has a charge ability, can move 3 in a straight line and then gets a +2 to their attack, which is why this is the most expensive mutation. I always find these factions interesting. The Filth are super gross, but they're different. So if you've never played with the Filth before, the Filth have those mutation cards, which they put on their common cards to make their common cards better. They don't have champions. Well, this one has one champion in it, Nanny. I do like the dual factor between Nanny and the little girl. So they're moving around and Nanny's protecting. It's there's a lot of video games and things that have kind of that same concept. So I think people like that, and it has this creepy vibe. Daddy doesn't like you. So it has that in there. The mutations are cool, although if I'm telling you that as I play the Filth here with her, I'm going to want to mix them with the mutations from the first summoner and from the reinforcement deck and just go through and pick some mutations. It's not like they're very cohesive. They're interesting, but there's lots of interesting mutations, and she's certainly going to be an army that has a lot of these mutations in it. And so if I was going to get this Filth set, I would highly recommend getting this and getting the first summoner or the reinforcement pack just to give you more range in what you have. The Benders is another one of the sets that I would say is certainly for experienced players because you have to know how to manipulate these puppets. These puppets are walking around, they're cool and they're neat, but you need to be able to move them, and it's hard to move them, so you're going to have to use other guys to move them to them, or the puppet master, and moving around. Once you get that going, it's great. Canceling your opponent's abilities, and then just a couple sheer tank-type champions round this out to be a very nice set. Of course, one of the things about Summoner Wars that I like so much is how even it is. I haven't actually even played these two factions against each other, but every time I'm like, ooh, how would this one work? If he cancels out these powers, and if she uses the mutations against these Benders, and that's kind of a fascinating thing. Both of these are more of advanced sets, and some people won't like the Filth just because it's gross and nasty. Other people won't like the Benders because they're playing against them. I tell you, every time I play against Benders, I'm like, these guys are such a pain in the neck. So both very interesting factions. Great way to end up the set. The Benders and the Filth, second summoners. Dice Tower Judgment, creepy, but excellent.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.